day my wife died, I made her a promise. I told her I'd be okay. I told her the kids would take care of me. I meant both of those things when I said them. That was 3 years ago. Last April, on what would have been our 41st wedding anniversary, I found out how wrong I was. I want to be clear about something before I tell you this story. My son is not a bad person. He's weak. There's a difference, and I've spent a long time trying to figure out which one is harder to forgive. A bad person knows what they're doing and doesn't care. A weak person knows what they're doing, feels terrible about it, and does it anyway because someone else told them to. My son's name is Clifton. He's 42 years old. He has a good laugh and a lousy spine. His wife's name is Pamela. Pamela is the kind of woman who never raises her voice. She makes her points quietly, at dinner tables and in car rides and in bed at night, and by the time she's done, the other person thinks the idea was theirs all along. I recognized it early. My late wife, Jean, saw it too. She never said anything unkind about Pamela out loud, but there was a look she'd give me sometimes, over the top of her reading glasses, that said everything. I'm a retired civil engineer. I spent 34 years working for the county of Maricopa, Arizona. I'm not a rich man, but I'm not a poor one either. Jean and I bought our house in Chandler in 1989 for $112,000. It's worth a little over $400,000 now. We also had savings, about $230,000 in a joint account that became mine when she passed, plus my pension, plus Social Security. Nothing extraordinary, just a lifetime of being careful. After Jean died, Clifton and Pamela started coming around more. I appreciated that. The house felt like a museum at first. Every room still smelled like her. Every surface had something she'd chosen. Having people in it helped. Pamela would bring food. Clifton would help me with yard work. My granddaughter, their daughter Aubrey, would sit with me and watch old westerns on Saturday afternoons. I thought we were doing all right. Then the paperwork started. It was small things at first. Clifton mentioned that it might be smart to get my affairs in order. He said it the way people do when they think they're being helpful and not at all suspicious. I told him I had a will. He said that was great, but had I thought about a trust? He said it would help avoid probate, make things easier for everyone when the time came. I said I'd look into it. He said he knew a guy, a financial planner his company used. I said maybe. About a month later, Pamela brought it up again, softer. She said she worried about me, living alone. She said, what if something happened and there was no one to make decisions? She mentioned a durable power of attorney. She said it was just practical. She said Clifton would never do anything I didn't want. She said it with those calm eyes of hers. I want to stop here and say something. I'm 67 years old. I have all my faculties. I go to the gym 3 days a week. I read the newspaper, the actual paper, not the internet, every morning with my coffee. I balance my own checkbook. I am not, despite what Pamela apparently believed, someone who could be walked into something without noticing. But I also know that grief does something to you. It doesn't make you stupid exactly. It makes you tired. It makes you want to believe that the people around you love you the way you think they do, because the alternative is too lonely to sit with for very long. I signed the power of attorney in February. Clifton was listed as my agent. The document was prepared by the financial planner he recommended, a man named Doyle, who had an office in Scottsdale and a handshake like a wet paper bag. I should have used my own attorney. I know that now. At the time, I told myself it was just paperwork. The anniversary came on a Wednesday, April 14th. Jean and I had been married on a Sunday, back in 1983 in a Methodist church in Tucson. I have a photograph from that day sitting on my desk. Jean in a cream-colored dress, laughing at something my brother said right before the photographer snapped the shutter. She's not even looking at the camera. It's my favorite picture I've ever taken, and I didn't take it. I was in the basement that morning. We have a finished basement. I use it as a workshop. I was cleaning up, going through some of Jean's boxes that I still hadn't been able to bring myself to sort through. The old intercom system we installed when Aubrey was a baby is still wired through the house. We used to use it to listen for her when she napped. I'd forgotten it was even on. Clifton and Pamela had come over the night before and stayed in the guest room. Said they wanted to be with me on a hard day. That's the thing about this story. Everything they did had a reasonable explanation. Everything was wrapped in something that sounded like love. I heard Pamela's voice through the intercom speaker on the workbench. Clear as anything. She was on the phone. I could only hear her side. She said, "He won't even notice it's gone until we're already done. He's down there moping all morning. He always does that on this date." A pause. "The POA covers it. Doyle already confirmed. We just need the account number and the routing number, and Clifton is getting those out of the filing cabinet upstairs right now." Another pause, longer. "I know, but the house listing can wait. We have to move the account first before he gets suspicious and calls the bank." I stood completely still. The box I'd been holding, a shoebox of Jean's recipe cards, her handwriting on every index card. I set it down on the workbench very carefully, like it was made of something fragile. I did not go upstairs. I want you to understand what that took. Every part of me wanted to walk up those stairs and stand in my own kitchen and say, "What exactly do you think you're doing in my filing cabinet?" But I had learned something a long time ago. Working in county government for 3 decades, you don't confront until you have everything. You don't show your hand. You watch, and you wait, and you document. I turned the intercom volume down. I sat down on my shop stool, and I thought. The money they were after was the joint savings account, the one I'd transferred into my name alone after Jean passed. $230,000. Under the durable POA, Clifton had the legal authority to conduct financial transactions on my behalf, which meant if Doyle had told them what they apparently believed, he could potentially initiate a transfer. I didn't know yet if that was actually true. I didn't know the limits of the document I'd signed, but I knew I had to find out, and I knew I had to do it quietly. I came upstairs about an hour later. Clifton was sitting at the kitchen table with his coffee. The filing cabinet in my study had been opened. I could see it from the hallway, the second drawer not fully closed, the way it always sticks. He'd been in there. I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I said, "Morning. Sleep okay?" He said, "Yeah, fine." His voice was a little higher than usual. Pamela was in the kitchen making breakfast. She asked how I was holding up. I said I was okay. I said being in the basement with Jean's things always helped somehow. She nodded and said she understood, and she handed me a cup of coffee, and I drank it, and I thought, you have no idea what I heard. They left after lunch. I hugged my son goodbye and told him I loved him, and I meant it, because it's still true even now, and that might be the saddest part of this whole story. The moment their car turned off my street, I was on the phone. I called my attorney, not Doyle, not anyone connected to Clifton. My attorney is a woman named Patricia, who handled the estate when Jean died and who I trust completely. I told her I needed an emergency appointment. She fit me in that afternoon. She listened to everything I said. When I finished, she asked me 2 questions. First, did I have any recordings or documentation of what I'd heard? I told her I hadn't recorded it, but that I could write down the exact words while they were fresh. She told me to do that immediately, date it, and email it to her before I touched anything else. Second, did I want to revoke the POA? I said yes. Under Arizona law, a principal can revoke a durable power of attorney at any time, as long as they're mentally competent, which I am. Patricia drafted the revocation document that afternoon. We also sent written notice directly to my bank with a copy of the revocation, instructing them to freeze any changes to the account and to require in-person verification with 2 forms of identification before processing any transactions over $500. Then I called the bank myself, spoke to the branch manager, a man I've known for 15 years, told him what was happening. He pulled up the account and told me, and this is the part that made my stomach drop, that a transfer request had already been submitted online that morning for $180,000. It was pending. It had not yet cleared. We stopped it. I'm not going to lie to you. I sat in my car in the parking lot of that bank and I shook for about 10 minutes. Not from fear, from something else, something that doesn't have a clean name. Grief and fury and a specific kind of sadness that comes when someone proves you right about something you desperately didn't want to be right about. Then I drove home and I started making a list. Over the next 2 weeks, I did the following things. I transferred the savings account into a new account at a different bank, one that Clifton had no knowledge of and no access to. I met with a different estate attorney, one Patricia recommended, and had a new will drafted. I removed Clifton as beneficiary and left the house and remaining assets to a trust for Aubrey, with Patricia named as trustee until Aubrey turns 30. I also contacted the county assessor's office just to confirm that no one had filed any paperwork related to my property. They hadn't. The house was still clean. I also installed 3 security cameras: front door, back door, the study where the filing cabinet is. They feed to my phone. I did not call Clifton. I did not call Pamela. I let 3 weeks go by in silence. They called me first. As it turned out, Clifton called on a Sunday evening. Casual, said he was just checking in. I kept my voice even. I told him I'd been thinking about getting the back porch repaired. He said that sounded good. He asked if I wanted him to come over and take a look, maybe that coming weekend. I said sure. He arrived Saturday morning. Pamela came with him. I had a pot of coffee ready. I had the table set. I had 2 envelopes sitting on the kitchen counter, and when they sat down, I brought the envelopes over and placed one in front of each of them. Pamela looked at her envelope. She looked at me. Her face was very still. I said, "Go ahead and open them." What was in the envelopes? A printed copy of the POA revocation, officially filed. A printed copy of the bank's confirmation that the pending transfer had been stopped and the account closed. And a letter, written by me, not by Patricia, because I wanted to say this in my own words, that described what I had heard through the intercom on the morning of April 14th. Word for word, with the time and the date at the top. Clifton read his copy. His face went through several things in about 30 seconds. I watched it happen. Pamela read hers more slowly. When she finished, she set it down on the table and folded her hands and looked at me, and I thought, she's going to try to explain this. She's going to find a way. She said, "This isn't what it looks like." I said, "What does it look like?" She didn't answer. I told them both that I was not going to pursue legal action at this time. I want to be honest about why. Partly it was because I talked to Patricia about it, and she told me that financial exploitation of an elder is a criminal matter in Arizona, but that proving intent with a POA is complex and could take years. Partly it was because I didn't want to put Aubrey through it, but mostly, and I'm not ashamed of this, it was because I didn't want to spend whatever years I have left in a courtroom fighting my own son. I have better things to do with my time. What I told them instead was this: Clifton is no longer in my will. The house and the accounts are protected in ways they cannot access or contest. If anything happens to me, Patricia handles everything. They will not be receiving a phone call from a hospital. They will not be notified through me of any changes to my estate ever again. If they want a relationship with me going forward, it will be on my terms, and the first term is that Pamela is not welcome in my house. Clifton started to cry. I let him. I told him I loved him. I told him I was not doing this out of anger. I was doing it because love without boundaries is just permission, and I was done giving permission to people who used it to hurt me. He asked me if we could fix it. I said I didn't know. I told him to get himself some counseling. On his own, not couples counseling with Pamela, his own counseling, and call me in 6 months. I told him I'd answer. They left without finishing their coffee. I washed the cups. I put them back in the cabinet. I stood in my kitchen for a while and looked out the window at the yard, at the roses Jean planted along the back fence in 2009, which I have kept alive through 3 Arizona summers because I refused to let them go. The hard thing about being betrayed by someone you love is that the love doesn't go away. It just changes shape. It becomes something you have to carry differently. My son thought the money was the point. He thought the house was the point. He let Pamela convince him that I was just an obstacle between them and a number on a balance sheet. He was wrong. I'm still here. I still get up every morning and read my newspaper and drink my coffee and take care of those roses. I go to the gym on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I had dinner last week with an old colleague from the county, and we talked for 4 hours about nothing important. And I drove home in the dark feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not happy, exactly, but okay. I told Jean I'd be okay. I think about that sometimes. It turns out it was still true, just for different reasons than I thought.